Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. As always, support the transmission. I need your support. Best way to do that is by becoming a paid subscriber on the Substack. You get a discount for the annual, and I produce a weekly analysis for subscribers only, and we do Zoom calls off the record, shooting the breeze, discussing world events. You can donate, purchase a console if you want to chat with me. Do leave a podcast review on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen or watch Geopolitics and Empire. Joining us is Jeremy Savory of Savory and Partners, as well as Millionaire Migrant, who specializes in citizen by investment. Welcome to the podcast, Jeremy.
Thanks very much for having me. Good to be here.
We have a few mutual, I think, acquaintances. Vance of My Latin Life. I've been on his podcast. I was listening to you on his podcast recently. And before sort of delving into some of these topics, if you want to tell us about the work that you do, I believe you've worked closely with governments regarding sovereignty, internationalization, citizenship for some 15 plus years. You've got Savory and Partners, and I think Millionaire Migrant is a new sort of business initiative that you're getting off the ground. So if you want to just tell whatever you want to tell us about your work.
Yeah, sure. So basically, Savory and Partners has been around for 15 years now. Savory and Partners is a multiple government accredited citizenship and residency provider. So we're an agent in 5, now 6 jurisdictions. We also cover European programs, Golden Visa. We do digital nomad programs as well in Europe. We do also business migration, Canada, US, to cover a few countries. But what happened is, that's 15 years. It now has operations in 8 countries, physical operations in 8 countries. We have 65 people around that right now working there. So that's everything from marketing, operations, legal, HR, and so on. And then recently I started Millionaire Migrant to kind of give me a separate platform that I could talk more openly around subjects that cover a wider range of matters other than citizenship and residency, just through investment. So talking about internationalization, about tax, about investing internationally, profitably, setting up businesses overseas, it gives me a lot more bandwidth.
And maybe just to start with that, this sort of context foundation of internationalization, the idea, technology has really allowed internationalization to go to the next level. I know people. I had an old coworker who has 4 passports. It's possible today to have property virtually in any part of the world. Have multiple residencies and bank accounts strewn across the planet. I was born into internationalization with dual citizenship and living between Europe and the US and now Mexico. And I've always viewed internationalization as something that gives you many options, fail-safes, fallbacks, which puts one at ease in one sense. I have less worry because I can always pick up and go elsewhere if there's trouble. If a war breaks out, or the economy tanks, or the government suddenly decides to implement totalitarianism, or if the cartels, what's the word in English now, threaten me, I can just pull out my passport and disappear. And so, internationalization also brings an opportunity for work, investment, even love. And so, could you give us a bit of a breakdown, how you see this idea of internationalization, its benefits, what motivates some of your clients in internationalizing?
Yeah, it sounds like you're a bit of a pioneer as well. You took the bold step of acquiring different nationalities, and I think now, people are referring to you as a pioneer because the US now is probably one of the biggest markets. Our inquiries went up like 40% year on year. A lot of that is going to Portugal. We're getting quite a few to the UAE for golden visas. We're doing some to Italy as well for tax purposes. We're getting a bit of a wide range, but yeah, it's amazing how things change. Russia hosted a World Cup and Olympics, and then fast forward a couple of years, and now they're persona non grata everywhere. Can't open bank accounts anywhere. And then you look at how Europe, US, for example, starts closing its doors on them. Those people start taking the money out of bank accounts, selling their properties. And then one of the main beneficiaries of this is the UAE, where I'm currently right now. And the UAE property market has grown considerably in the last 4 years. I think it's still one of the hottest real estate markets and has been since COVID compared to any other country in the world. And a lot of that's because and all of this starts from one guy wakes up one day, points to the neighboring country and said, I think that belongs to us right now. So we're just going to go over there right now. And a snowball effect, a domino effect creates where suddenly matters are affecting every single person. The cost of energy goes up in the UK. This has an impact. So I think a lot of this citizenship and residency and internationalization of having different bases, different homes in different countries, all comes from having agency over decisions being made by people that have outsized influence on our lives. We don't want to be, paying higher energy bills in the UK. We don't want to be kicked out of and persona non grata because we're Russian. We don't want to be destabilized because of whichever person is in charge of China, Turkey, US. People just want to know that they can go anywhere else, and if there's a tax advantage, so be it. If there's the ability to acquire a nationality, so be it. If our children are born in that other country, then so be it. There's just so many options that are out there that people are really now becoming very interested in, and are curious to know just what you can do. I mean, 2 passports, 3, 4, 5, multiple residencies, bank accounts. And then now people are starting to ask that question, which I really hope people wouldn't ask, which is, where should I be if things really, really get very, very complicated? So this is interesting times.
I think in 2022, when the sanctions came, I had one of my listeners of Geopolitics Empire was in Russia, and they said, "Sorry, I can't donate anymore because I was cut off from Swift, Visa and MasterCard." And I read this week, a British woman, her son is doing ballet, in Moscow, and I think Lloyd's debanked her because she was spending money to her son in Russia, which is absolutely insane. But
well, if there's any comfort to her, I got debanked as well. It's not difficult to get debanked. Nigel Farage got debanked. But I think, again, that tells us that in the same way there is liberty of nationality and the ability to be nationality fluid, if you will, is also the reason why we're having this significant Bitcoin bull run that we're having. Is people don't want to be totally dependent on a fiat currency, lest the US dollar loses its value, right? I mean, everyone was heavily into USD, or people were heavily into fiat currencies. Suddenly, all those people were saying to buy gold a year ago are being proven right.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the idea, because things are getting so insane. When it comes to savings, gold, silver, have some crypto, have some dollar. In one of your recent videos, you're talking about euros. Having a house there, a house here, because you never know when someone's going to come and take one. Well, okay, I've got this. And so. Just to go further on that point of internationalization, it's been around for a long time. I've had people like Doug Casey on the program. I think the idea goes back, even centuries, in some ways, but things seem to be accelerating, with the last 10 or 20 years, and that's been your field where you've been working. And so, where do you feel, besides just protecting oneself? You've got liberty, technology, which is fast moving. People want to protect their sovereignty as individuals. What are some positive things? The clients that you deal with, investment, different opportunities. What's going on in that space?
Well, I think currency diversification, to keep it simple, matter of the day, this is one of them. I think people notice the benefits of having properties in different countries if that property gives them a residency. From my own personal case, I acquired citizenship by descent, like yourself. So you got Croatian, I got French. No one really needed it, 20 years ago. But then suddenly there was Brexit, and then it was a good time to have a French nationality. I ended up moving to Portugal as well, having a residency visa there, taking advantage of the NHR tax program, which is now closed. But I know now that I won't have any personal income tax to be paid until 2033. So even if the UAE does bring it in, I also have a backup for a backup. My wife is South American. I met her in Bogota through friends, and before you know it, you notice that her passport wasn't great. It's a lot stronger now, but the ability to have multiple nationalities really helps a lot. I think what's really happening right now, especially since COVID showed us that there were other ways to conduct business. So a lot of face-to-face meetings could now be done online. Then people didn't have to be staying in that particular country if the tax environment or the cost of living was not favorable to them, so they could also earn that money overseas. And I think governments are having a bit of a tough time, particularly larger governments that really are overly dependent on tax revenue, are having a tough time trying to find reasons why those people should stay in that country. You see the exodus from the UK. They cancelled the non-dom because they figured, none of these guys are paying taxes. So And in all their wisdom, instead of saying, well, let's look at Italy. Italy was 100,000 euros per year, 200,000 euros per year. If you paid this, they wouldn't ask you to any other money that would be generated outside of Italy. But the UK decided, instead of charging 2 or 3 or 400,000 pounds per year, they would just abolish it entirely. So all those people who were the upper echelons of society, who were the most mobile of people, so wealthy, wealth can be extremely mobile at that level, they gave up their non-dom status, and you've seen now an exodus of around, I would say, 9,000 people, I would say, have left the UK in the last 12 months. That's people who are largely because of the UK non-dom status. I mean, you've got other strata as well, but that's a lot of tax revenue that's disappearing. They even mentioned about an exit tax, but all that did is panic people about actually even moving people who are considering to move to the UK. So apart from the ones who are leaving, you now want to talk about an exit tax. Well, you haven't, and you've missed that boat. But what's happened is that just the mere mention of it would, if people weren't already worried about going to the UK now, because there is no non-dom, they're definitely not going to do it if you're going to talk about exit taxes. So we see this going on, and I think we're not far away from citizenship-based taxation. I think that the more that these countries find, unfortunately, not very good ideas about generating tax revenue without understanding that it's not a zero-sum game. So, we just increase taxes and then they'll just pay. It's like, no, those people just leave, and therefore the burden we pass down to the next strata. And when you get to those people, then what happens if those people leave? And then you will start to go, all these consulates around the world, all these consular services. I know this because I deal with the governments in the Caribbean, for example. So I understand that the costs involved with having their consulates, because they don't have many compared to the UK, for example, or Europe. But there's costs involved. And so there might come a point when, much the same way that USAID is getting shut down or the British Council is losing its funding, that you might find, well, we can't close down the consulate. So let's just tax those people who still have our nationality but live overseas. So, for example, if you in the UK, if you're living overseas and your child is not born in the UK, if your child's child doesn't have a child born in the UK, then you lose that citizenship. And that's all to try and balance the books. You've got the passport; it's very powerful. A passport is a very powerful commodity today, and it needs paying for. If you want the consular support, if you want to be rescued in any type of situation, that costs money. So I think we're moving towards citizenship-based taxation a lot sooner than we think.
Yeah, they're just expanding that, and we have to, for Croatia, they have a thing where if I live in Croatia, I have to register that I live there, and then they can tax me. But if I leave, I unregister, so I owe no taxes. As a U.S. citizen, you can live on Mars. You still have to file a report to the IRS, and all that sort of stuff. I'm curious what people groups or ethnicities are most interested in extra citizenship that you deal with. Is it American, Europeans, Latin Americans, Africans, Middle East, Asia?
I would say probably the ones who are least interested would definitely be South Americans. I think they have a lot of benefits. I mean, Brazilians can go to Portugal fairly easily. They're big investors in the golden visa. They took advantage of it over several years, but there are also different options to do in Portugal, different like D2 program, D7 program, for example. But I think also the rest of South America it's not too difficult to get Spanish citizenship. You can apply after 2 years because you're a former colony. So those people, although they were taking advantage of it, Latinos are generally, I know this being married for several years, they're generally happy how they are. They don't really, very well, you're in that part of the world too. It's just like they're the happiest people in the world. I mean, as long as it's family and good times, then everything else comes way, way, way down. So I would say they're the least interested, followed by probably Europeans. That is changing. I would say Europeans are looking more to physically move rather than obtain a nationality. I think for them, tax residency is really the main thing. So you're looking at Panama, looking at Paraguay, looking at the UAE, Monaco. Those are the type of places they're looking for. At the top of the scale, definitely one of the fastest growing is, say, India and USA. Those are two places we're really starting to see. I mean, India has been going for a while. USA is slightly more abrupt uptick in demand, but we see Chinese. I mean, it kind of comes in waves. There was a bit of a lull for a couple of years, and then it picked up again recently. I think another thing that is happening is generally because the cost of the citizenship by investment programs and residency by investment golden visa programs are going up in price. There's either people who acted on it or missed the boat, or there's other people who are saying, I can see the trend line here. As all these different programs close down, they really want to take advantage of it. But again, we've been doing this for 15 years now. All we're doing is taking a different stance in trying to increase awareness around the whole concept of sovereignty, about taking it, trying to still try and get hold of the idea of some kind of meritocracy, if that even exists. Because I feel that what's happening is that some of these countries, the way that they're making their decisions, Europe being a very good example, is like you are kind of killing the risk takers and the wealth creators. And it's quite sad to see. I mean, there's so much to be, human beings are capable of a lot of things. But if you keep putting in barriers to this and taxing us at every single corner that you can think of, then those people, the good thing is we'll start to move around. But I think that the downside is that you kind of kill ambition. And I think that's the worrying part.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll ask you about that right now. You mentioned Europe. We're both EU citizens. I have a strong view, being a former history teacher, international relations. You've had Soviet dissidents like Vladimir Bukovsky call Brussels the new European Soviet. You've got Dr. Rath. He's this German scientist. He's got some primary source doc. He's published a book called "The Nazi Roots of Brussels," right? That some of the genesis of this EU project has ties to old Nazis, and it's becoming very bureaucratic, technocratic, anti-democratic. And I wanted to ask you about this, where on the one hand, technology is giving us more liberties. It's helping internationalization, the work that you do. But I also see it taking away liberties. On the other hand, governments are now implementing digital ID, digital currencies, electronic travel authorizations. I like to call them electronic thought crime authorization. I ran into an old student just yesterday. He's from Colombia, but he spent now 2 decades here in Mexico. And he just told me that one of his Mexican bank accounts, he can't use it anymore because the Mexican government is now bringing in digital ID, which is your Mexican voter ID card, and he doesn't have one because he's a foreigner. And they're like, sorry, we can't do business anymore because you have to use now your Mexican national digital ID to do business with us. For that reason, I was unable to renew my debit card recently because even though I'm Mexican, I never took out the voter ID because I knew it was going to be the digital national ID. And so, they're bringing in these types of controls. You mentioned the EU. They want this, I don't know if you heard about that, this EU asset registry that they're talking about. They're talking about finance.
The digital asset registry, the MiCA. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and it's like, that's like a prelude to confiscation. I mean, that's like Soviet style. And then they're talking about, hey, look, there's 10 trillion euros worth of savings of our citizens. We can use that to finance the nearly $1 trillion rearmament project that we have. And then what really gets me is this ETIAS. You recently posted on your X about that. I don't have that problem, but my family is not yet European, and they have to fill out these social credit forms. UK just activated it in January. And then I read about this American YouTuber. I think he's Christian. He's got a big following. He had booked to go to the Jordan Peterson's ARC conference and hotels and flights, and he wasn't aware of the UK electronic thought crime authorization. And it's basically like a social credit form. So he's got the passport, he's got his visa, and now there's this third thing, and he fills it out, and they rejected him. So he could not go to the UK. And so just any thought on the dystopia, this trend of dystopia?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the ETA, you've got the ETIS is going to take a bit longer to come into effect. I mean, it's just Europe, right? So they're just going to discuss it and maybe get around to doing it. But the ETA came into effect, and it even. But yeah, going back to your point, I do feel like there is a little bit of I don't want to say like over control, because ultimately, because of the nature of the business, I've been dealing with the governments for 15 years. So I've had I've had a very high level access to be able to understand how the governments work in terms of giving out document ID. So I'm privy to a lot of things, and I kind of see it from their side, how they want to be able to because what happens is this is let's say it's a travel document. It's a travel document that another country has a waiver agreement with it. They will only accept that if they're comfortable with the protocols that the issuing country are going to introduce to be. And so there's a lot of trust involved in this. So therefore, in the same way they want to make it to have biometric passports and machine readable passports, there is this kind of big connecting dots between all these different countries that allow them to have visa-free travel. There was an Indian blogger the other day who just was so annoyed because the amount of documentation he had to fill in to be able to travel to one country. And he's like, I'm a travel blogger. I've got this many subscribers. I have a clean travel history. I have good, money in my bank account. And he was just frustrated. But it's like, but you can also understand you come from a country of 1.6 billion people with probably one of the longest track records of migration in history. I mean, I've met third, fourth generation Indians in the Caribbean, in Fiji. I mean, Fiji, you know how far away that is from India, from anywhere, not just India. And you'll see that there's an Indian diaspora there. You've got Canada, you've got Africa. So it's nothing against him personally, but there is you have visa waiver agreements. So seeing it from both sides, I think I understand. But I do think that everyone has an option, right? So we can always just decide to go, actually, you know what? I don't want to get that voter ID, or I do want to go somewhere else. I can obtain a second nationality that doesn't ask this information from me. But yeah, I do think that I'm not one of those people that is just angry at control. I know there's a lot of people who are very much pro-libertarian. I would say that I'm more kind of pro-success. Like, I understand why you want to do stuff. I don't want to be fighting against it. I don't want to go and live in a black hole. I understand that we need to keep structure and we need to keep civil order. But I also think that I just don't want any of my opportunities to be cut off. I mean, this is why I left the UK almost 20 years ago. It's just I just didn't see any growth. The UK recently, I went there to see family, and apart from all the taxes, which there's numerous, we had a family meetup, and one of my cousins was coming, and he came to just park on the street, pick us up, and we go in the car. We drove to a restaurant. He had to pay a entry charge just to get into London. He has to pay road tax for the car. And then he had to pay, on top of that, he also had to pay a fine for using that street to be able to pick us up and go. And it's like, at what point do we stop? So my problem is not so much on the controls, but more the barriers to success. I moved I'd never been to the UAE. I just got a one-way ticket here. And I just said, let's just go there. Let's see what happens. I arrived. It was Ramadan. And it's not like Ramadan now, right? Back then, it was really a real shock, culture shock. It was summer. So it was like 45, 50 degrees. But I realized that when you start to go to those frontier markets, that's where you have lots of opportunity. That's where things can happen. It's the expats that go out there that decide to have a little bit of discomfort. We see our family less. We see our friends less. We miss our home comforts. But, the brave, for the brave, there's some opportunities. So I believe that if you don't like it, you can just leave. But I do look at countries like the EU and just think, at what point do we start to become a bit like China?
Yeah, and the example that I gave, I'm still not at a point where I'm not unable to function, like with my debit card thing, or I'm banned from PayPal. But I'm just your thought, like taking my former student as an example. I mean, he has another bank account that's functioning here in Mexico, but let's say he has an issue. I think, as you say, there are ways you can find around it. No loopholes. Like you've got a lot of fintech companies now, so technically, maybe he can get like a Wise account or Revolut or something, and then have that money, get the debit card, and then use that if the Mexican banks don't allow him. No, there's these types of solutions.
Yeah, there's more and more of them right now. I mean, we deal, like, I have a crypto private banker. I didn't even know such a thing exists, but if there's such a thing as a crypto private banker, there's clearly a service for these type of companies that can help people to navigate between fiat and non-fiat. But I think technology is really what is accelerating all of this. I mean, if you read the book, The Sovereign Man, the Sovereign Individual, we talk about this, which is the fact that technology is kind of becoming a bit of a headwind and a challenge towards the state. The fact that we can be completely mobile, we can go and live in a country, we can be a tax resident of another country, we have a nationality of another country. But all of this is enabled from obviously cheaper flights, faster Wi-Fi, acceleration of remote working. You can be in one country, manage a team in multiple countries, invoice in another country, and technology, we can see with the advent of AI, is just going to accelerate all of this. And so what's going to happen is that we're just going to be essentially just avatars, just floating around the world, taking advantage of whatever can come, but also then leveraging our capital and our talent, and be able to go to those countries in much the same way that you said, right, I want to open up a factory in Mexico, right? The Mexican Trade Commission would be able to give you incentives. They would waive taxes for you. They might even include a citizenship. That would happen in a lot of countries. If you invested a factory of this size with this and recruit this and hire this many workers, you'd be getting some kind of nationality incentive, definitely a residency incentive. You would have customs and duties waived for a period of time. Now we can see this now we start to see this more and more, where people can say, you know what, I'm going to come to your country. What can you give me? So you have non-dom programs. You have tax incentives. So at many different levels, different countries are understanding, and particularly as micronations, which are a little bit more agile today. So you've got your smaller countries, like you've got your Paraguays, your Panamas, your Singapores, your Hong Kongs. They can all offer a lot of things because they've got smaller land mass. Therefore, they're never really going to attract that much in terms of farming, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of labor. But what they can offer is tax-free incentives, and this is what people are really looking for in a more agile world, in a more asset-light world.
Yeah, and I'm reading like in my other home, Croatia, they're offering, I think, to expats who want to return 5 years of no income tax, and Hungary, if the woman has a second or third child, no more income tax for life and stuff like that. And for the work that you do, as I understand it, so, if you want to tell us about the pathways with which you help people obtain a second or third or fourth or fifth passport. And so I guess some of it's by descent, right? And then other is by investment.
Yeah, we do a lot of citizenship by descent. Obviously, I got my French one, so I went through the whole process myself. I got all the documentation together. I remember I had to lean on my grandmother and my mother to kind of go to the French consulate in London. They got so friendly with the consular officer there that they tried to matchmake me and the young French lady that was working behind us. Thankfully, that didn't work out, and I met a young Colombian lady. But I went through that process. We help people. We unfortunately, quite a few of the Italian clients we were taking care of, they got a little bit stung with the recent changes with Italian citizenship by descent. But we all know why. It's because if you look at Argentina, there's a lot of Argentinians doing it. You've got quite a few Americans as well, but the Argentinians, to name it, Brazilians as well, were taking, I wouldn't say taking advantage, but why wouldn't you want to take advantage? So we've been doing that for a while. Citizenship by investment, as I mentioned, 15 years. So I still remember doing Dominica when you had to do physical interviews. 95%, 99% of the people in this space right now were not around it. They all came in, and there's been acceleration since COVID where people have added it on their X profile or their Instagram profile and said, I offer this service. But, some of us older guys, we were doing it back in the old days when there were physical interviews. Now it's changed. It's getting more complicated. It's taking more time. Some countries still as fast as they were. St. Kitts and Nevis is still as fast as it originally was. We took about 6 months. Grenada is pretty fast, but some of them are taking longer. So you've got that, and we've had our licenses for several years there. So we deal at a very high level. We help clients take care of everything because unfortunately there's a lot of horror stories out there. It's getting actually a lot worse now in the last couple of years. So we do that, but we also do the residencies. We do Paraguay residency. We did Panama. We do Portugal. Portugal we've done a lot. I did Portugal residency myself in 2017. So my family and I, we moved over there when the kids were small. We set up an office there. And it also proves why these countries design such programs, because if you don't have some kind of incentive, which is either tax or nationality, then, or, in the Europe's case, basically visa-free travel, while you have that PR, then there's plenty of other places where people can go. So there has been an incentive. But we've been doing this for a long time, and we've helped in excess of 2,100, 2,200 families. So it's about 11,000 people. So we've done every nationality with, so we've done, Mexicans with Dubai nationality, we've got Antigua passport, we've done Americans with, Italian residency to get Portuguese golden visa. So you name any combination, we've done it. I think what's happened now is that I have been investing in real estate for 23 years. My background previously was working for developers and semi-government developers, sovereign wealth funds. So I started buying property since I was 23 in the UK. I bought my first. Then I bought a property in Poland when I was 24. A property I owned for 18 years and never saw it ever. From the day I bought it to the day I sold it. And then since then, I've invested in 11 countries. I'm just buying an apartment now in in Medellin, in Colombia. And so we also add this now. So we have a real estate department, which is supported by an analytics team and a legal department, because when you're buying in overseas emerging markets, there's some real opportunities, real yield, capital gain possibilities, but it is emerging markets. So I'm sure you can relate to how complicated it can get. So what we've done is we've now built several departments, so we've got a lot of experts that we can call on, because no one person can be an expert in everything, but by having a few different experts supported by important functions such as, your legal, your analytics, we now offer this to our clients. Because what happened is we used to get clients for passports and they say, oh, can you give me a residency visa? Can you give me a bank account? Can you give me a tax ID, a tax residency certificate? Can you help me to invest my property, my investments profitably? And we've managed to do all of these things. So the next minute, we're kind of effectively as kind of a small private family office.
Yeah, and when I did my Mexican, I was de facto eligible for Mexican citizenship, and I could have done it myself, but I found a really good guy here in town, and I paid him, it wasn't that expensive, and he just said, show up this day at the office, and I show up and I get my citizenship. And it was funny, I was obviously fluent in Spanish, and they gave me a 5-question multiple choice history of Mexico, and I actually had taught Mexican history. I knew it better than most Mexicans, and I aced it. And I joke with them. I said, and the final test, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, where you put me in a room and I have to eat a habanero chile without sweating. And they were laughing. And you also have this blueprint. Was that what you're talking about? You guys offer the citizenship, but I think you also said one of the services.
Yeah, so we have different. I think we're going to change it a little bit, because we're finding that some people just want some of the services from some of the companies that we have. So some people say, listen, I just want to get a golden visa. I just want to get additional nomad visa. I just want to be able to get a tax residency. Some people say, we're getting people who are just contacting us now because the real estate thing is something I haven't publicized. It was a passion project that's been over years, but the portfolio that I've managed to build, I don't own all of it. I've obviously disposed of a lot of assets over the time. I definitely got rid of my European stuff. I'm not very bullish on the EU, you can probably tell. But people have now started saying, I'd like you to consult me on offloading some of my properties, for example, in the US, because I used to own properties in the US. Now they want to buy in South America, the UAE. We're looking at other countries as well. So I think what we're going to do is break it down for those people who say, I want more of a la carte as opposed to, a 5-course menu. But we've got a bit of everything. I think the whole thing is I'm really enjoying this interaction with clients, because Saving Partners is a big firm, and we have a lot of clients, a lot of repeat business, and some of the clients, they come through third parties, so they would have their own advisor, lawyer, a fiduciary, for example, would be between us and the client. So I don't really interact with the clients, and my team do. But by having Millionaire Migrant, I get to understand what's really happening in the world, because we've got people, sharing stories such as your own, and those people are very forthcoming about their views, about their situation, about the way they see the world is going. But they also have very unique objectives that we look forward to looking after. So it's been quite exciting after running a corporate thing for 15 years. And my career that was before that, to be able to have a little bit more of an interaction with clients and to try and help them really take advantage of all the amazing things that you can see around the world. I mean, I traveled South America recently. I went to El Salvador, Paraguay, Panama, Peru, and it was, it's great because it's I kind of get to have a holiday while at the same time while I also try and find solutions for our clients.
I want to ask you. This is sometimes on my mind. I'm maxed out mentally on with three, having to deal with three countries. And I've heard you in passports. I've heard you in podcasts talk about your different passports and residencies. You're managing dozens of residencies, passports, and properties. And I've lived in half a dozen countries. I got kids now, and it just, I mean, it's different for everyone. But personally, I'm just kind of tired, and it's like my kids. I've got three passports. The kids got two thus far, and it's kind of like, oh, next month I got to go renew this passport, and I got to go renew that one. And it's like my wife's visa, and then does it ever, for you or clients, having to manage all this paperwork, does it ever just become too much? The headaches, and not to mention maybe some tax obligations, things changing, national IDs, right? My Croatian national ID expired, so when I go back, I have to renew that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, national IDs, we don't find that clients are too worried. A lot of clients don't do it. Like, for example, in the Caribbean, if you want to get, I mean, they don't give IDs, but they give driving licenses, but sometimes they're like $2,000. And it's like, really, $2,000? Like, it expires in 3 years. So clients, we've done it. I mean, I've got driver's licenses from the Caribbean, but it's not really there. I think what they do appreciate is that they kind of feel like they're going back to their butler, because we did the application, so we have a lot of documentation on file. Like the other day, I had a lady. I mean, we must have processed her application 2013, and she just called me, same number. I'm still on the same number. She was like, "Hi, how you doing?" It's like, "Yeah, my daughter passport needs renewing. Can you help us out with that?" And we said, "Yeah, sure." She's like, "Do you need anything?" I said, "I think we got everything, but I'll connect you with your relationship manager, and we'll take care of things." So they really like the fact that they feel like they're coming back home, and there is that intimacy between us helping them the first time and how much they've really enjoyed having that second nationality to be able to travel, enjoy, and just generally feel free. Some people have, changed their names because they just didn't really feel that they identified with their primary nationality, for example. So all of that is very smooth. It's all taken care of. We've got a guide now, just as an email about an hour ago. Oh, I want to add on, I got married. I want to add, we've got a child. We'd like to add them. And they were doing Antigua. And we just got everything for them. And, the existing clients, we just give them a bit of a discount. And then, that's really nice because there's really a relationship. And the advantage of this is I now have I'm very fortunate to have an exceptional contact book. That means if you think how long I've been looking after high net worth and ultra high net worth people, I can literally go to any country in the world, or if I need something in any country, I'll just call someone, and that person will be extremely influential in that country. So, for example, people talk about Armenia citizenship, Georgia citizenship, Egyptian citizenship, Jordanian citizenship. I mean, on my phone, I could call probably the guy or one of the guys in any of those 4 countries and basically make what is fairly obscure, citizenships. I can get it done. So it's very comforting to know that you've got that network. As far as my own family is concerned, it is a little bit complicated, and we can definitely get more passports. I think right now it's just like it's not a priority. We've already got quite a few. My kids definitely are going to get more than I am, and we can do more in the future. I'm personally I was actually looking to do Turkey recently. I was quite interested about where Turkey's positioning itself geopolitically. And I'd love to know your thoughts on that. But I just felt the market right now, the opportunity cost, and I don't know. I wasn't massively convinced about investing $400,000. But how do you see Turkey right now?
I think I've only passed through often the Istanbul airport, so I haven't been there. We were actually thinking of stopping there on our way to Croatia, but we chose a different route this year. But I think I am, as you say, I think they straddle east and west, and Erdogan is the ultimate hedger, opportunist. And yeah. I would be bullish. I know Mikel Thorop of Expat Money, who's been a sponsor of the podcast. I think he's got Turkish citizenship, or at least property. I'm sure residency, but I have a cousin. She used to live in Turkey, and then after the terrorist attacks, things got the insecurity increased for a while. I think that was one of the key reasons they decided to leave. So they left Turkey, but I think it's still positive. Economically, just that position, they've got a lot going for them.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you about bad actors in the space. I won't name any names, but I've seen over the,
I won't either.
over the past few years, and particularly in the last few years, you see all these accounts on X, on the socials, selling expatriation, all types of services. What I don't like is when someone, number one, I think is anonymous. I think you have to have your name out there because you have to check. It's got to be legit. The other is we've seen examples like of some of these types of people illegally selling, Mexican passports. There was a guy, some people might know who he is, but they'd paid off a functionary, Mexican, government functionary, and and I think they got a few through, but eventually that person got caught, and then people had paid tens of thousands of dollars to get this shortcut illegally to Mexican citizenship and passports, and they were out of 10, 20, $30,000. Then all these different types of communities all over South America where people paid in almost their life savings, and there was a scam and they lost everything. I mean, unimaginable. And just thoughts on the bad actors in the space.
Yeah, it's a big problem. It's really bad. It's not just limited to Mexico. It's pretty much in a lot of countries. We see ads running for Slovenia passports, Romania passports, guys saying I can get Armenian citizenship, Georgia citizenship. Mexico's one is really, and I mean, we have Paraguay, Argentina. I mean, you name it, it all comes to me. I got one guy in a disappearing Telegram WhatsApp group chat who want to do Italian citizenship, and somebody vouch. I mean, I get all this stuff all the time. I mean, but even on a larger scale, I remember when I was approached for North Macedonia citizenship, and there was some legit agencies that just jumped into it, signed up to it, say, "Hey, I'm an accredited agent by North Macedonia." And you can still see now people talking in Reddit group chats and all that stuff, saying, "Yeah, so what happened?" Those guys, I met them. I went to visit their office. I had my guys go to visit their office in Skopje in North Macedonia. I do a lot more due diligence than the average person by quite some distance. And the reason being is because my clients trust me. I can't lose their money. We had guys who did, all types of stuff where I would have to, it's my responsibility to go and do the due diligence before we take them through. Because if those people, they'll just come and go and they'll disappear. They make a bit of money. I think the Mexico thing, unfortunately, it's pretty bad. I was in a meeting here with one of the senior police commanders in the UAE, and we had a chat, and he said to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Citizenship, second passport, residency." He said, "You do Mexico?" I said, "No." He said, "Yeah, don't do that. We put those guys in jail." And I think that whatever's happening there has consequences, because sometimes people, unbeknownst to them, think that everything is fine and they're going to travel on it, and then they're in for a big surprise. Obviously, when I mentioned this, I mentioned there's clearly Mexicans like yourself who've done it the correct way. But unfortunately, there are gaps in different systems. And it's not just Mexico that it's happened. And the authorities overseas, they're aware of it. I mean, still today, Mexico's part is still pretty strong, right? I mean, you have a lot of visa-free benefits, and hopefully that won't get modified in the future because of the actions of what's not really a minority. There's clearly, it's kind of big in Mexico, this stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I was thinking again, just some benefits to having these different passports. I was living in Kazakhstan, and I had planned to go to North Korea, but the U.S. government, it's funny, the rule, they say an American cannot go to North Korea. They don't say an American cannot go. They say you cannot go on an American passport. So I'm like, all right, I'll pull out my Mexican or Croatian. I did end up going for different reasons, but even if you want to go to Cuba or Mexican passport also has benefits. And I heard you also mention, I think in another podcast that you gave an interview that, during COVID, I was living in Kazakhstan and I wanted to escape back to Mexico. And the only way out was through Amsterdam, a flight through Europe. And they weren't, I think, allowing third, if you weren't European to go through. And, it was a funny story because my wife is Mexican. My kids are Mexican-American, not yet Croatian. But I had, we came in and then they put us in a waiting room. They weren't aware that I was Croatian. I didn't know what was going on. I thought they knew I'm supposed to just wait here for a while. And after 10 minutes, you got to be critically thinking. And I'd read the rules before, and I go up to the guy angry. I'm like, "I'm Croatian. Why am I waiting here?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, pass through." And so having these passports gets you out of these situations. And I want to ask you about the American dream, because you did a video on that recently that was interesting. You also did a video on Trump's $5 million green card. And I've been covering this topic. I had on recently Edward Luttwak, renowned historian, to talk about this. So I think the American dream is declining. I still, in some respects, I still think it's the less worst place to go. People are still going there. You can still kind of go and make money. But I talk to a lot of Americans, and it's slowly slipping away. I found my American dream in Mexico. I'm living the Mexican dream. What's your take sort of on the West and where America's at?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as capitalism is concerned, I think America's still far ahead of this. I know I've got friends of mine who moved there, and they just say, look, the opportunities here are boundless. It's very much pro-business. So I do think on that front, there are UAE, I would say, is probably the new American dream. I mean, it is a place where you can come and you can just get moving up and running. It's so smooth, so easy to get up and running. I wouldn't be anywhere near where I was today if I hadn't come to the UAE. And if you just look at the number and the data that is supporting where it's going to be, it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's the new American dream. It's just an Arab Emirates dream. I definitely see it's got a potential. I think what the challenge that America has is that it's still a great place to be able to get up and running, and there's just an energy that wants you to succeed and to grow, which is an energy that I really like. It's a hustler's paradise. I think where its challenges are, where that would make you want to think that it's not so much American's dream. I think that capitalism comes with a lot of downsides, and what's the word? Kind of the shrapnel that comes from it would come from the fact that if it is so capitalistic, what happens is that some things that shouldn't really be capitalized, such as health, insurance, food, kind of get mixed up in this. And that's why there is this awakening now in the United States. It's like, I'm eating what? Chlorinated chickens are banned in the UK, banned in a lot of countries, but in the US, it's like, oh, well, we that's how we do it. So let's just give you a case in point. So I think when it comes to food, pharma, insurance, I think that needs to change, because I think there's some things that shouldn't be so much embedded in capitalism. And I think the divisiveness that is facing right now, the divisions, is really, it's not good to see. But I think that also leans into what we're talking about, which is internationalization. It's just being apolitical, just not having a dog in the fight, just being completely, I voted once, just the first time I knew I could vote. I just went to vote and then just felt like, well, what was that? That was a waste of time. What was that for? It's the same as when I bought a lottery ticket, or when I gambled once in Vegas. It was like, well, what was the point of all that? In business, if you really want to grow, the things that you'll really have the biggest profound impact and return on investment are things you can control. So doing things you can't control are a waste of time. And that's why I've never voted since. I just don't see the point in doing it. It's like, I'd rather just, when they say vote with your feet, I'd rather vote with my feet and just leave, as you did, as I did, and as thousands and increasingly more and more people are doing. So I think that it's sad to see a country that is divided, but it's the same in the UK, it's the same in France, and it's happening. And it's all just politicians who I've got to meet quite a few in my career. Is just, they need to be in the limelight, they need to be in the hot seat, the big golden chair, and the usual targets of this to try and make us, and you'll know this, being very much in your political history, is that they have to come up with some kind of challenge or imaginary threat, which is, the rich, the immigrants, or the government. Is usually one of these three or so. And I think that just basically, instead of people, just drives people against one another.
Yeah, and I've given up on voting after COVID. I just I don't see a point, as you said, and I've just and if it ever comes to a point where one of my countries introduces a fine for not voting, like some places do, was it Bolivia? I think I said for a month, or Australia as well. I'm just going to pay the fine. I don't care. I'm not going to vote. Just to get a little bit geopolitical, my biggest concerns generally today center around what I alluded to earlier, the digital concentration camps that are being built, insecurity, whether it comes from narco cartels or civil war or world war, as well as the cost of living. For you, what are some of the if we look into your crystal ball, what are some of the key threats you see happening now that sort of serve as a good motivation for getting a second passport or residency or citizen by investment?
Um, I think on the positive side, I would see the social mobility that comes with being overseas. Being able to marry someone from another country, do business with people from another country, to recruit people from another country, to work for people from another country. I'm a big believer in social mobility because I believe wealth mobility leads into social mobility. I think in terms of threats that we face, I would say some of the threats we're facing are as much as we've got a divided intra-nation where we have, Republicans and Democrats and Labour and Conservative and so on. But I think even into the inter-nations as well. So between, clearly what's happening now, Trump and China, you see India just sitting on the sidelines and being very happy with this. UAE getting benefits of all that Russian influx. So I think we're seeing going back to Erdogan and being kind of playing very well both sides. But I would say that we're just getting more fractious across countries. I think the advantage, though, is if you want to take South American exposure, that's the best place to be, right? Apart from obviously Mexico got hit with the tariffs, maybe if you go a bit further south, those are the type of countries you want to be because no one really has a problem with them. If things get really bad, that's the place that you want to be. They live a very simple life. I mean, life is just less complicated, less materialistic. It's all back to the simple values, which is just having your nearest and dearest and enjoying life before money and power and politics and war and everything else came into it. Panama is the only country in South America that hasn't been invaded. Paraguay is incredibly stable as well. I visited there recently. But yeah, unfortunately, I think the headwinds that are coming towards us are unfortunately citizenship-based taxation. I can't really see any other way. I mean, once you've done wealth taxes, exit taxes, property taxes, capital gains, inheritance, at some point you're just going to. It's coming, right? I mean, you can't have everybody cramming themselves into Singapore and Panama and Paraguay, and then just going, hang on a minute, you can lean on those countries, but if those countries don't have the resources to withstand that, such as natural resources, then you'll be like, well, I'll just tax you on your passport because you are getting a benefit. A strong passport has incredible value in today's world in terms of not just travel, but banking or prejudice or peace of mind, which is you can't put a price on peace of mind, liberty. It's a very valuable commodity, and that's why the price is going up. I mean, Turkey used to be 250,000, now it's 400,000. Spain is closed. Portugal is now 500,000. Ireland is closed. Moldova is closed. Cyprus is closed. Caribbean is more expensive. People are seeing that. Some people are just still not doing anything about it, but I think those are people who are invested in something else and just saying, well, let me just wait until those prices come down while I ride the bull market of the stocks or the crypto. And then guess what? You tell them 100 times, like, no, try and, take some money off, diversify. And they don't. They're maximalists and they'll die maximalists as well.
Yeah, they're cutting off the lifeboats, and tax is the other big one. Yeah, and OECD, UN are pushing that. Jeffrey Sachs, I've been talking about him this week. He gave an interview to the UN in China podcast, and I'm not a fan of his. Sorry, he just came out and said, I want UN global taxes on shipping, on aviation, on breathing, on flatulence. Okay, he didn't say those last ones, but he was just saying I want an international tax on everything to finance basically the construction of a United Nations with teeth that can. And I'm like, you're crazy, man. That is insane. We've covered, I think, the waterfront. Anything I might be missing that's important to ask or bring up, or any final thought?
No, I think that's it. I think sometimes the only thing is I feel that some people are really so focused on where they see the anger is, rather than they should balance the anger that they have against the country that they are upset with or disenfranchised with the excitement and the ambition of the opportunities that lie overseas. I find a lot of people just coming to us with a lot of rage rather than balancing it with some of the excitement about the opportunities that will come. Because I was the same thing. I was like, well, I worked really hard. I took a commission-only job when I was 23. Most people don't do that type of thing. But I was just like, no, I want to get paid on what I bring. I don't want to get paid for my time. And, I realized that at a very young age. And then when I was seeing that 50%, I think we were at 45% or whatever it was many years ago, was being taken. And it's like, I'm taking risks. I don't see, I do this for my clients. I take the risk and I get paid for the risk. But the tax, there's no risk for you guys. You're taxing my risk appetite. And for what? Like, I should really probably get some kind of tax credit back for taking a risk. But I just realized that was going to change. Voting was going to change. People kind of, pray or beg or gamble and just hope that some kind of external force will improve their environment. And unfortunately, that comes from a lack of education. Those things will not change. It will never change. When did the voting for the other guy get improved situation? It's not. You'll just go every 4 years, you'll change because you hope the next guy's going to be better. And I see that's another thing that's going to happen, is that we're going to be flip-flopping more regularly than we used to. We won't see two-term presidents or two-term prime ministers because people are just, there's more immediacy. The younger generation, your Gen Zs, to name just one generation, they're just not patient anymore. And people want change faster, but you try and turn a company, an SME, a small company, a medium company, or even a large company with tariffs, it's going to take you 5 years. So what do you expect the head of state and an elected parliament, even if you do have that parliament on your side, in 4 years? So you're just constantly, it's just not going to happen. And so all the things that you wanted are not going to happen. Therefore, you'll be changing every 4 years, but that means you'll be disenfranchised or dissatisfied every 4 years. So every half decade, you're guaranteed not to be happy in the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, you're just not going to be happy all the time. So why wait a decade when you could just take advantage and say, let me just go somewhere else, try my luck. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back home and you've got some great bar tales to tell at the bar or tell family and friends. But you'd be surprised just how much opportunity there is in any country in the world. Obviously the UAE, I came here and I built a lot of things, but Portugal, I wasn't there for long. I ended up investing in a startup, in a tech startup, investing in property, setting up a business, hiring people, making friends, and then coming back home and getting probably one of the best tax residencies that are out there. So Portugal knew what it was doing. It was like, hey, come here, we'll give you all of this. So I think I'm really happy and excited that more people are looking and becoming more educated. And again, education helps you to avoid those aforesaid bad actors that we're seeing out there as well. But yeah, I look forward to building a bit of a community. I think this is one thing that, I've got my clients, they're all friends, but they don't really meet each other. They all know me. But I look forward to trying to build a kind of community of people who really share that passion for the amazing things that are out there. Everything from food to partners, to business opportunities, to real estate opportunities, to whatever it may be.
And what you say, everyone is driven by something different when looking for the green grass on the other side. And for me, it's been sort of just trying to be left as much alone as possible. I used to, I lived in Mongolia and I absolutely loved it because it was, you felt
outer Mongolia or inner Mongolia?
Outer Mongolia in the Gobi Desert, in the country
How
Mongolia.
hot?
Huh? Gobi.
Hot?
No, it was Mandalgov, the province, but
Nice. Lots of mutton then.
Oh yeah, camel, horse, but it's got the lowest population density on the planet, and you're left to your own devices, and or here in Mexico, I feel just more. I basically have to deal with very little, paperwork or nothing, and I'm just left alone. And that's what kind of motivated. If I ever move back to Croatia, I'd probably have to deal with a bit more paperwork, which is annoying, but. You got to do what you got to do, and so your links are in the description. But again, where are the best places for people to follow you, find you? Where would you like them to go?
Savory and Partners is savoryandpartners.com, SABORY and partners.com. There you can see a little bit about who we are, how our history started, and what we do. Everything that is related to investment immigration is there. MillionaireMigrant.com is the new channel that we've started, and the website, it's still kind of taking shape, but it's really getting a lot of traction. And so we're kind of building it out and trying to figure out what people want. It's been really doing a lot better than I expected, actually, to be honest with you. But I think that speaks to the fact that maybe there was a gap for this somehow. And that is the place that I'm trying to be a little bit more out there and talk about different topics, personal topics, political topics, tax topics, real estate topics, and really just growth and success and opening businesses overseas, benefits of this, how to recruit people, legal, a lot of things that are actually quite handy for the day-to-day entrepreneur. So millionairemigrant.com is kind of where I'll be covering everything, taking some of the components which are backed by Saving Partners, which is obviously a government-approved citizenship by investment firm.
How is it being a YouTuber?
Well, I mean, you can imagine when I told my wife, I mean, she was ecstatic when we had breakfast and I told her. I think it's just, no, I don't really mind. I mean, I started my business with a 25-year-old Jeep Wrangler that I bought for $2,000 and a small desk from IKEA. So I'm used to starting things small and being surprised how they turn out. I think it's just more that it just gives me the ability to talk a bit more openly about topics that I'm passionate about, that I'm not known for. And one of them is for example, real estate investing. Like nobody knows that. Even my friends don't know about it. I've just been quietly buying and selling stuff and doing extremely well. And I'll be releasing a guide about things I've learned, but using case studies of different things I did with different variables in different parts of the world. And I know it's pretty wide, the range, and the returns of investment have been very good as well. But again, if I didn't have a YouTube channel, no one would know about it. And I don't really have the energy to start a simple website and a company. But what I do is I can just talk about it because I just can't be bothered to just, the Saving Partners website, I wrote the original web copy. If you ever know what it's like to start a website or the blogging and all that stuff, like I did it myself. I didn't just leave and steal something from somebody else. I literally sat down, came up with the logo, the font, the colors, the business cards, the signature, everything. And I'm just at a stage now where I can't be bothered to do the same thing. So it's just easier just to like rant into a microphone and see if anyone likes what I say.
You brought me back memories. When a decade ago, when I designed my logo for Geopolitics and Empire, I tried the Fiverr. You tried outsourcing; it was horrible. And I got to do this myself. So you sit down like for an entire day, like 12 hours, or I don't remember. It could have been 2 days or 3 days, where you're hashing out the design, and it's got to be something that doesn't have a copyright. So you're looking through,
Yeah.
and then, those were the days. But all right, thanks for coming on the podcast, Jeremy.
Thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great catching up with you.